Hello, everybody, and welcome to a bonus episode of Comic Book Nation. I am your host for today's episode, Logan Moore, and we're going to talk about something we normally don't do too much here on Comic Book Nation, which is video games. We're going to break down today's Xbox Developer Direct presentation, which notably featured new footage and a release window for the Indiana Jones video game that they revealed 3 years ago at this point. Joining me today are two additional writers from our gaming team here. We've got Ricky Freck. Hello, Ricky.
Hello, I'm ready to hit Nazis in their nether regions with a shovel.
And whips. We've also got Cade Onder here. Cade, hi.
Hello. What does Indiana Jones have a catchphrase? He doesn't really, right?
He says snakes. Why is it got to be snakes?
Yeah, that's it.
That's the catchphrase.
That's not a good podcast slogan though.
That's really not a good catchphrase in
No,
general.
It's not.
It's very specific.
It is very specific.
I mean, that can be a good starting point for this discussion then, because we're going to dive right into it. How many snakes will be in Indiana Jones in the Great Circle?
There's going to be an achievement for getting rid of 50 snakes with the whip or something like that. Probably get a whip them away.
There's gonna be a bunch of dumb references, I'm sure, like that. Okay, let's dive into it. If you have not paid attention, like I said, today there was a new Developer Direct presentation. This is only the second one of these that I think Xbox has done, right? Because they did the one last year where they stealth dropped Hi-Fi Rush, but we haven't had one of these in a time since, which is a little bit odd. But yeah, the big thing in today's presentation was Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, which is the new Indiana Jones game that has been ruminating for quite some time. We've now got an official title for it. We've now seen it in action. We now know that it's coming out later this year, which means this is immediately one of Xbox's biggest games for the remainder of 2024. Broadly, what are we thinking, Kate? I'll start with you. Like, this trailer, I felt like was fantastic, showed you everything you really needed to know to get excited about this game. What were your feelings on it?
I was surprised first person. That's the biggest thing that I took away immediately. Just never crossed my mind, right? Because you know the obvious comparison is Uncharted, and that's a third person action game, and you would think that that's what Xbox is trying to do. But I'm glad they're still trying to do something different, and they touched on there will be third person camera angles when he's climbing things, or we saw him going down a zip line. I think that's a really nice touch. That way you still get to see Indiana Jones from time to time, but you can also be immersed in these, as you're seeing right now, really rich environments with lots of detail. But I also love just how much action there is. The bit towards the end of the trailer where he's flying alongside other airplanes, shooting at them, and then jumping between the airplanes, and he's grappling up blimps and stuff. There's a scope and scale here that I don't even think we've necessarily seen in many Indiana Jones movies. It really does feel more, in terms of the scale, a little bit more Uncharted, but still fits within Indiana Jones.
Yeah, I was going to say that exact thing. They're Uncharted-ifying Indiana Jones here for sure, except they're doing it with the first-person perspective. That was the one thing I wanted to touch on quickly, and then we'll go to you, Ricky, is the first-person perspective is what's going to, I think, surprise a lot of people, and I'm going to guess, I haven't seen anybody talking about this on socials yet, but I'm going to guess people aren't thrilled about this because, when you think of an Indiana Jones game, you just naturally think that you're going to be staring at Harrison Ford and his fedora for the entire runtime of the game, and you'll still have certain sequences like that. But taking it first person makes a lot more sense. The more I saw this trailer and kind of got an idea for what they're doing here, I also, again, I think when it was announced that Machine Games was the one working on this, a lot of people were like, well, that's weird that you'd tap the studio that's known for first-person games to make a third-person game, because everybody just kind of inferred that that's what it would be. And it's nope, they're doing a first-person game. That's why they're the studio working on this. And I'm a huge Wolfenstein fan. I see Wolfenstein's DNA all over this, which is hugely exciting to me. Ricky, what did you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, I always thought it was going to be first person because it's a Machine Games game. So I wasn't that surprised by that. What I was surprised by is when they said that a lot of the puzzles are going to be optional, because to me, Indiana Jones, half of that is, him figuring out the puzzles, the penitent man must pass, that kind of stuff. If that's all optional, and they didn't say all of it's optional, but they said some of it's optional, that to me is an interesting choice and maybe a bad choice for me, because that's kind of the thing I was looking forward to most, is the tomb raiding aspect of Indiana Jones. And if that's going to be not the focus is just on combat, which, I mean, that is Indiana Jones, right? There's definitely big action set pieces, but to me, it's always been the the smaller stuff. So I don't know. It's a weird choice that I very interested to see what they do with that, because I was like, I don't know
I
about.
wonder if that means it's going to be like harder. Like, like they're like, we don't want to force you to do something that makes you think. Like, I don't like that. Maybe I'm giving them too much
What a
credit,
shame.
but like, they're like, if you really don't want to get to bust out the pen and paper and try to figure out, coordinates and star patterns and stuff, we're not going to make you do that.
What do you think
But,
this is going to be like The Witness, but
that's
for
exactly
Indiana
what I was
Jones?
thinking. Yeah, it probably won't be that extreme, but like, I would hope that means it's more in depth than, because if it was easy, then you'd probably just make people do it, right? Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
otherwise it's not taking that much time anyways.
And I will say, maybe it means they're not going to do what Uncharted and like God of War did, where they just explain you the puzzles the second you walk in the room, and they just tell you how to do it all. Hopefully they
or
won't
do this, or do the Spider-Man thing where you can press start and go to skip puzzle or something like that. Like, I do it, even though there's what they've said about the puzzles is a little bit peculiar. I agree, but they've shown certain things that make me feel like archaeology is still going to be at the forefront of this game. I mean, there's a lot of just him sleuthing around temples and interacting with weird things in this trailer. He's also got a camera at one point, which is something they spotlighted in the original teaser trailer as well. So there's going to be like some sort of photography element to this game, it seems. I'm not really sure if that will be anything more than just, take pictures and you get XP or something and you can level up your Indiana Jones. Like, I don't know how that's going to work, but it seems like they still clearly have elements like that. The whip is the thing that I am most the whip looks really weird at times in this trailer. Like, that thing looks really magical, how it's just, I mean, it always has been in the movies too, and it's always been sort of a suspension of disbelief what he's able to do with this item. But it looks real crazy in some of these gameplay sequences and some of these combat set pieces where he's just kind of waving it around in the air and it's causing the enemies to do crazy things like lunge forward or drop to the ground, like have it pull their feet out from under them. I think that's cool. I think gameplay wise, that will end up being very enjoyable, even though it's going to be video gamified to a great effect here.
Right.
Yeah, I like how he like targets body parts, and that has a certain reaction. If you target their legs, you drop them onto their back. You grab them by their arm, it'll kind of grab their arm and pull them towards you. The Wolfenstein like DNA I see. This is like a really specific thing I remember about Wolfenstein. Is like there were kind of moments where you could like grab onto someone and like hit them with a melee weapon or something, and it's like very locked in. And I see that specific mechanic here when he grapples somebody and just starts punching them. I did find it funny during the little behind the scenes portion. They're like, oh, in first person, you'll get to see Indiana Jones's knuckles get bloodied. And then he was hitting someone and his knuckles were like totally the same. And I'm like, are you just being dramatic or is that actually going to happen? But I do think the fact that this is kind of like a melee focus, like there are guns, but they're like, we kind of want you to be creative, throw.
I was gonna say at one point he picks up a hammer and chucks it at a dude's head and just knocks him out. Like, that's
cool. Like I'm glad they're not just doing Wolfenstein with Indiana Jones, because a lazier developer would probably do that. But they're just like, no, this is an Indiana Jones game. He doesn't go around shooting machine guns very often, at least.
They do have one sequence that is that him on a turret or something there at the end.
Yeah,
but then that looks like a very specific scenario in which he's doing something.
Yeah.
Like that,
so I'm glad that they're doing something a little more different with a first person perspective, and it still looks tight. I feel like third person always makes for a better use of those kinds of things, but it still looks very fluid and tight, and I really like that.
How do you guys feel about the story stuff here? I don't know if either of you are huge Indiana Jones fans. Obviously, we're all in our 20s and 30s, so we didn't necessarily grow up going to see these movies in theaters, but I feel like this is kind of a timeless franchise in a lot of ways. So I'm sure we all grew up watching these movies potentially. Ricky, I don't know about you, honestly.
Oh yeah, definitely. No, I was trying to think if I had been to the theaters, because when did obviously not Crystal Skull.
I think Last Crusade was like, I want to say Last Crusade was like late 80s, early 90s, maybe.
I may have gone to the theater for that.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly. Again, I just know I wasn't alive when it came out.
Yeah, I wasn't alive for any of those.
Okay, stop bragging, Cade.
How do you guys what do you guys think about what they're doing with the story here? It's set between Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade. I think they said specifically it's in 1937. Nazis are running around, running rampant once again, and they're going to be the primary antagonist, which like I like that, and I like that they're going back to the well of, you know, Nazis being the bad guys, especially with Machine Games being at the helm here. It's kind of a natural fit given their history with the Wolfenstein series. I am curious to see if there's other like little factions he runs across in this game. I was coming into this, I was curious to see if they would end up doing something sort of Temple of Doom style, where it's a different sort of villainous group or whatever. But nope, we're just going back to Nazis, and for the most part, I think I'm fine with that. I don't know. How do you guys feel about the story stuff? Do you feel like this is going to be cohesive with the movies? Is that something that even matters to you necessarily? Like what are your thoughts on like the story implications of what they're doing here?
I hope they don't care too much. Like, I hope they don't get too precious with the movies, because like who cares at the end of the day? Like, just make the game that's fun, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not too worried about that. And, you know, I don't know. Is the Indiana Jones timeline that sacred? Do people really care that much about?
There's a lot of young Indiana Jones fans out there.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. Okay.
But I mean, that's all years prior. Would like Mutt be alive at this point? Where they're gonna like include a reference to Mutt and be like, he's alive, he's out there, Indy.
Because that's like, in the '60s, right? And he was in, or like late 50s, I think.
But he's like in his 20s in that movie. So it's
like barely be alive if he was. I don't know. I don't think the timeline's aligned either way. They're not going to de-ageify Shia LaBeouf to be a baby. I would love to see that. It'd be hilarious.
Technology.
They got holes. They got references back to his youth. They can do it. But no, I don't. What is the whole thing with the Great Circle? Did they really go into much of what that is?
I don't know. We haven't really talked about this, but that is like a truly horrible name.
It's a terrible name. Yeah,
it is like absolutely without question the worst Indiana Jones. Like the 5 films in this, easily this is like number 6 spot for me. Like all of the other movies have fantastic names for the most part. Even like Tanner on our team was saying, like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. That's an awesome name for a movie. It is, even though that movie's not very good. But the Great Circle is really bad.
It's pretty lame. It's definitely like what you know, when they were making Indiana Jones 5 and they didn't have a name for the longest time. That's something you would see like a fan poster put on, and like the fan poster looks terrible. It's just a picture of a circle with Indiana Jones in the middle of it. That's what I would think. But I'm still intrigued. Todd Howard's a big Indiana Jones fan, and he is part of the, at least like coming up with the general story, it sounds like.
I think this is like his idea that he has sat on for like 15 or 20 years. He
apparently pitched this like a long time ago, and I think it kind of just fell apart, or like they couldn't do it or whatever, and then for whatever reason it came back around and they were able to get Machine Games to do it. So I would imagine it's something he's very passionate about, and he's a pretty good storyteller, so I trust him to get the right people to then bring it to life.
I see Ricky's face there, grimacing with the Todd Howard storytelling.
He's no Steven Spielberg, he's no George Lucas, but he's gonna do his best. But yeah, I'm intrigued by the mystery. I think like the Dial of Destiny was like also something we didn't really know what the Dial of Destiny was. There's a lot of rumors that it was, well, Ricky hasn't seen it, but do you care?
I haven't seen it either.
Well, it's time travel. There you go.
I knew that. I got it from the trailers to some degree.
They've done that. So I would imagine they wouldn't do that again, right? They're probably going to do something else. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm very intrigued, and I hope it's interesting because I like when Indiana Jones just go like full supernatural. Probably isn't the right word, but sci-fi maybe is the right word.
Well, it's the same sort of thing that Uncharted has always done. You know, you get to the end of those games and it's like there's crazy zombified ancient people or something like that, or Yetis, and that's kind of why I had like a huge annoyance with Uncharted 4 when you get to the end of the game and the game's like it's kind of poking fun at you for expecting that. Like, what'd you think? There was ghost pirates or something? I'm like, yeah, kind of. Have you played any of the previous games? Like, yes.
I wonder if it's like a Neil Druckmann thing that was just like, that's too silly. Like, or something, because he was the one who, you know, him and Bruce Straley did that game. So I don't know if that was their direction, but I hope they commit in this game and go full bore and just like, there's some crazy sci-fi mythical legend thing in this part of the world.
Yeah, one of the things, whatever the Great Circle is, again, we don't know a lot because we've only got the one trailer to go off of. But he's like drawing a circle around the world, so clearly it's got something to do with the entire globe. And they've already said that you're going to be going to like the Himalayas and Egypt and like a bunch of different other locations in this game. So whatever the Great Circle is, it seems like just a narrative excuse for them to mix up the locations that you're going to be do very often. And I'm sure we'll see the classic plane with the red line going around the world as you're going from level to level in the game. So yeah, I whatever the purpose is to get you to different environments and stuff like that. Because the last thing I want to do is be in a jungle for 12 to 15 hours, however long this game is. Like, it looks like they've got a great diversity of areas and levels that they'll be bringing you to. So that's exciting.
I tried to find information on the Great Circle and just got a bunch of math equations, and that's too much.
Perfect. Perfect.
We're not going to talk about algebra here or geometry or whatever it is. I guess the last thing, again, 2024, we're going to do a larger discussion here at the end about Xbox's lineup and what they've got coming up this year. But this is immediate. I mean, this is, like I said before, this is their biggest game of the year now, right? Like, I can't think of anything else coming out that will end up being as big as this.
I don't know. What about Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020?
Call of Duty, I forgot, is theirs now.
So in theory, that, I guess,
technically Call of Duty. But I mean, yeah, as far as like traditional exclusives and I guess what we expect, like, this is going to be absolutely one of their biggest games of this year. And they've got a couple other games coming out here that we're not going to dedicate as much time talking about these, but I figured there were a couple other big tentpole releases here in this Developer Direct presentation that we would touch on quickly. Avowed, the next RPG from Obsidian. I don't know if either of you care about Obsidian or if you like their previous games very much. This is a game set in the, what is it, Pillars of Eternity, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Universe. Have either of you guys played either of those games? Because I have not personally.
I played a little bit of it, but I did not finish it. No.
Are you psyched for Avowed then? A first-person game set in that universe?
I will follow Obsidian pretty much. I'll at least try it, right? Like, I'll follow Obsidian pretty much anywhere. You know, the Outer Worlds, was incredible. Their Fallout New Vegas, the best Fallout game.
Say, are you a New Vegas truther?
Yeah, best modern Fallout game in my opinion. Like, I just think they do what Bethesda tries to do so much better than Bethesda. So I'm excited to see what they do with their Elder Scrolls like. And being able to shoot guns is definitely a plus.
That's the big thing I was going to say. Combat looks way more in depth in this game than I expected it to be. Like, there's a lot going on here for a first person role-playing game. Like, I think I'm still in some sense just used to, Skyrim and Fallout and I guess Starfield this past year now. Like, those games are pretty rudimentary in their gameplay stylings. This looks like it has a lot more meat on the bones and a lot more you're going to be able to do. And I'm curious to see how those mechanics then jive with the RPG systems in the game and like how that expands outward and like what all you can do. Like, this seems like a game where a lot of people will play through it 5 different times and be like, I had a specific build in this sort of way, and I'm going to replay it. And I'm going to be a dual wielding pistol guy or whatever, like it seems like one of those sorts of games. Other than that, I don't really have any strong feelings on it other than this is Obsidian. I'm sure it will be pretty good and I might check it out because everything else they do is really great. Did you have anything that stood out to you about this one, Cade?
No.
Do we know if it's multiplayer or if it's open world?
I think they've said it's like open areas or something like that.
Because when they kept talking about regions, which if you played Outer Worlds, that one was like different planets, right? So
I think that's the same sort of thing they're going for here, where it's not going to be one cohesive open world like it would be in Skyrim or something like that, but it's going to be like smaller locations.
The rumor at one point was that this game was supposed to be their Skyrim, and it's not. And I don't know, would you guys have preferred something like that, or are you cool with it being a little bit more smaller in scale?
No, I prefer this type. It's very reminiscent of Knights of the Old Republic, right? So the same thing. So going back that far. So I definitely like this better than a big open world. I think having smaller contained areas makes it, you can learn it better. So I think that makes it like better to play. Open world is cool, but there's a reason people go back to Kamurocho every single year.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
No,
do.
that's a really good. That's a really good point. Yeah, I think I'm fine with this. I don't know if I'll play this just because there's so much else out and there's so much else in my backlog, but I think this looks really impressive and this is out this fall. They haven't given a specific date yet, but I'm gonna guess this will launch at some point alongside Indiana Jones there. We'll talk about this in a second. In our wrap up here. Last thing, Hellblade 2. It's out. It's coming out May 21st. Anything else to say about this? In short, my thing is like, cool, just release the game now. It's been like 4.5 years that they've been talking about this. Like I wrote about this game the other day and I forgot that they revealed this literally in 2019.
Alongside the Xbox Series X.
Yeah. So this has been a long time coming. I don't think the game looks bad. I mean, visually, obviously, it looks incredible. Mm-hmm. I played the first Hellblade. I liked the first Hellblade. Hearing that this one's also going to be a shorter narrative experience, like I might just, dive into it just because it'll probably take 6 to 8 hours or something like that, which I'm totally fine with. But yes, it does feel like we have just been hearing about this game for far too long. And for as much as we've been hearing about it, there has not been enough like new gameplay or anything of interest to really keep
Here's
me
our motion
engaged.
capture studio. Cool. Show me the game because
Yes.
I'm not going to be looking at the motion capture. I'm going to be looking at the people in the game, which I know, there's overlap there, but I want to see the game. And I think part of the reason why they're not showing it is because the game's very short. And so you don't have a lot to show, which is fine. But it's like, I wonder if Microsoft is like, what their thoughts are on, they bought this studio and they've invested a lot of time and resource into this. Is it going to pay off? It's going to be a great Game Pass game, I'm sure. All these games are going to be on Game Pass, which is wonderful. But at the same time, I'm like, it's a lot of time to be giving to someone to make a 7-hour single-player game and probably a lot of money. This game does not look cheap to make.
No.
I hope it pays off. It looks good, right? It looks great, and I'm sure it'll be very good. But how many people are going to jump into a game where you're experiencing psychosis, right? Like, I don't know what the sell is there. That's not a really like, oh, you have Game Pass? Go try out this game that makes you feel like you're schizophrenic. Like,
yeah, that was kind of my thing with the first one because I remember playing the first one and I played it with headphones on because that was the big thing everybody recommended. And I just remember getting to the end of it and I was like, I feel like mentally drained from having played this game. And so when we're coming into the sequel and they're like hyping up all those aspects again, I'm like, I don't know if I can go back through another round of this because it's just a lot. And I respect what they're doing with the game and it's impressive in a lot of ways, both visually and the audio design in the first game was impeccable. I have no doubt the sequel will be the same thing, but it is also not necessarily like a fun game. Like it's not Call of Duty, it's not Fortnite, and not every game needs to be, but I don't know. It's hard for me. You have to be in the right frame of mind, I guess, to play certain games like this. So.
Yeah. Going from this to Indiana Jones will be the greatest whiplash in gaming this year, I think.
That sets up, we're going to wrap up here. That sets up kind of our last talking point. One, what did we think? Let's start here. What do we think about this like developer direct presentation style? Because again, we've done 2 of these now. Do you guys like this? I really think there's a lot of like fat in these that they could trim out. Just a lot of like I mentioned in our Slack chat when we were talking, but I felt like 3 or 4 different instances in this presentation, different developers said, we want you to truly feel like X or whatever. It's like, it's just typical talking points from developers or typical marketing speak when they're trying to hype up their products. I don't really care to hear about that. Like, just show the trailer or whatever. I don't know. Because this lasted about 45 minutes when I feel like it really only needed to last 20 or 30. I don't know. What do you guys think about this whole thing they've got going on now?
Well, they threw in Visions of Mana, which added another probably 10 minutes to this show that we didn't need.
Yeah.
I listen, I prefer E3, right? Just as a whole, just once a year, we get one big show instead of having to justify every quarter there's something and like maybe you don't have something. And so you get some minutes of fat. Thankfully, like I would say, like there was enough there for some of these games, like Avowed, Hellblade, and Indiana Jones. Like that's a good lineup for the year. Like that's a lot of variety, something for everybody. It's last year I remember it being pretty rough because it was like Redfall, and I don't think they had much to say about Starfield yet. So
Starfield, they didn't really start talking about a lot until like the summer. I feel like.
So that was a rough one. This one was slightly better, and I think they might be doing it right now as we're speaking, but I think they have an ESO thing happening right now too.
Correct.
So
yeah, I mean, looking at their full 2024, then, like, do you guys think they have a good lineup here? Again, with Indiana Jones is the big thing, but Indiana Jones combined with, I mean, they've got all this Activision stuff now. Who the heck knows how that's going to go? I mean, obviously they're going to be the Call of Duty publisher now, which is still weird. I still don't even think about them as owning Activision either, because they kind of, I don't know. It's just a weird little thing I feel like they're doing off to the side. I don't know. I feel like on paper, I feel like this looks stronger than last year, at least. Because last year, like you mentioned, Kate, was Redfall, which bombed, and then Starfield, which was divisive, I guess we'll say. Like,
yeah, I mean, it did what it was supposed to do, probably.
Yeah.
In terms of what it set out to do, I think it was what it was, and that's fine. But I think this is a stronger year in terms of just like more stuff throughout the year, right? They had like Forza Motorsport too, but that's like people I think are more privy to like Horizon because that's way more arcadey and more fun. Motorsport's for those hardcore racing fans. They don't have either of those this year, as far as we know. They may announce one during the summer. Go ahead.
I was going to say they usually do every other year, right? So this would be the Horizon year, but they haven't announced anything. So, but they do have Microsoft Flight Sim. So
Microsoft Flight Sim is the other one. I was actually looking at some of their other things they have coming up here, and like, to me now, like, this means Fable is definitely not this year.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Fable is definitely not this year. I'm not thinking at this point. They've got that Contraband game, which we still have no idea what's up with that. We've got the Outer Worlds 2, which Obsidian's first got to get avowed out the door, obviously. Everwild at Rare, who the heck knows what's up with that thing? We've heard that thing's been like internally canceled or like reconfigured, or
there's a rumor they're doing Banjo again.
Yeah, Banjo's a thing. State of Decay 3 is a thing. We've got Kojima making something. Like all that stuff though seems like it's 2025 and beyond for sure. Perfect Dark is the other one. Who the heck knows what that game was announced that
was like the following year after Hellblade.
Yeah, that game was announced a long time ago, but that studio as well, the initiative was like, that was announced even earlier. Like, I want to say like 2017 or 18, maybe. They were like, we've established this studio. They're making a game. And then
a quadruple A game, I think is what they referred to.
And then 7 years later or whatever, we've got really nothing. Okay, yeah, it was founded in 2018. So we're nearing the 6-year establishment of the initiative, which, I mean, studios have to staff up and stuff like that. I get it. But I don't know. I think this year looks like a good one on paper. We'll see what happens. PlayStation and Nintendo really haven't shown their hands, but we know Nintendo's almost certainly going to have a new console in the mix there. So that's lurking. It feels like Nintendo's going to be the big player this year, and everything else is just kind of going to revolve around it to some degree. This is definitely not going to be the same year that we had this past year, which was just truly ridiculous. And I feel like has kind of bled into the first months of 2024 here, but I don't think we're going to keep up this momentum with, Suicide Squad, Persona, Final Fantasy, like all those things at the start of this year. I feel like it kind of dips off after Final Fantasy releases.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I think the interesting thing going back to like the format of these presentations is like developers are starting to be way more careful about when they announce their games and when they're saying they're going to come out. Like Avowed, we didn't know when that was coming until like today. It was always just in the future, it'll happen. And now we know it's this fall. So it's entirely possible this year will get more populated as we get closer to summertime and start to have a better idea of what the fall looks like. But like we don't know what PlayStation, they don't have any.
PlayStation.
It probably would have been factions, but
PlayStation in particular has been very secretive with their things. They don't announce, like, you feel like even Spider-Man didn't get its date announced until like 3 months before.
We knew it was coming in 2023 for a while, but like we know, I mean, I won't go into specifics, but we know Wolverine's not coming this year, so that's not happening. So that's their only like other big game that I think they have announced, unless Naughty Dog's going to come out and be like, Last of Us 3 this year, get excited. But I would say that's probably a long shot. Yeah.
Druckmann's too busy filming the second season. here in a couple weeks or whatever. So, all right, that's going to wrap it up for this. I want to mention here at the end, if you enjoy our gaming discussions here as part of Comic Book Nation or Comicbook.com, we might have some more content like this for you in the future. So be sure to subscribe to the Comic Book Nation feeds. Keep an eye on the YouTube channels, the audio feeds, all that stuff. We're going to be doing things like this far more frequently throughout 2024. We're going to be, we've gotten a lot of feedback that people like when we talk about video games. So expect us to do more of that in the weeks ahead. Again, subscribe to the main Comic Book Nation feeds. We've got different shows on here. We've got the pull list where we're talking about new comics. We've got the main Comic Book Nation podcast, which goes live every Friday, where we're talking about TV and movies and all sorts of other stuff. So be sure to subscribe and keep in touch with what we've got going on over on comicbook.com if you want to stay in the loop with whatever else is happening in the world of video games and beyond. Until next time, thank you for listening. I am Logan Moore. This has been Cade Onder and Ricky Freck, and we will see you back here next time. Bye-bye.